Climate justice. What do we want? Climate justice. When do we need it? Right now.
Climate change, it's a matter of survival. It's a matter of human rights, and it's a matter of economic development, among many other interesting development facets. In the Gambia, through the Banjul Climate Caravan, we are telling the Gambian story, how Gambians are facing day in, day out with the climate crisis. Being part of a continent that contributes 4% to global emission, we are telling the Gambian story on climate change.
The Banjul Caravan is designed to influence strategies, national targets on their position regarding adaptation, mitigation, and climate finance. The caravan, which started in Birkama by the young volunteers of the environment. These organizations stand against injustice on climate change.
Climate justice. When do we need it? Right now. When do we need it? Right now.
The coastal villages of West Coast region are also another area where climate injustice is taking place.
It's a blessing to see young ones volunteering, and that's to volunteer their time to be able to participate in this. I see a lot of excitement around it, and I know that from the government's point of view, regional governors, local governments are going to be very, very supportive to make sure we have climate justice. Climate justice is huge if you hear it, but it's a universal stuff. So it's something that is affecting the whole country, the whole world. In reality, without climate justice, a lot of our society, especially the Gambia, the underprivileged get affected to a way that we don't actually see it until it affects us. And if you look at it, the whole world is affected. You look at global warming, how the reality of it, how it is hitting the whole world. So unpredictable everywhere. But the most challenge is the people who are actually poor, the underprivileged, and the Gambia happens to be part of that.
These areas are known for sand mining, and there are many activities that are conducted there that affects the land areas.
In terms of climate issues in West Coast region here, I think this is one of the most affected regions in the Gambia. If you look at the different assessment that has been conducted by either NDMA or either NEA and other relevant institutions, when it comes to sand mining, you will understand that this region is mostly affected, most especially the coastal villages we have in the West Coast region. If you also look at mining as well, for gravel and other things, you will understand that this has created havoc in many parts of the society, and it is still increasing.
With the West Coast, where we have most of us, especially this year, have been affected with the climate change, the justice is required. A lot of polluters are not the ones actually who it is affecting. So the reality is we need that safety net to be able to help our people.
So the need for us to converge here today to do an activity of this nature is quite very important, because it will help us to look way forward. What do we need to do as people of this particular region? How do we put our efforts together? How do we synergize our efforts? And more especially with the young volunteers coming forward, engaging young people, engaging different stakeholders that are very key in addressing issues of climate change in this region.
I thank the EF people, the youths who are in it, but most importantly, the ability of this government to accept that there is climate change and to have a conducive environment created by this government to help us actually achieve what we all want, which is climate justice. So I thank you, and I look forward to doing more things with you in the future.
The Central River region of the Gambia is known to be the breadbasket of the Gambia. History would reveal that this region served as source of food for the whole country, as the famous Jahali Pachal is located in this region. According to experts, they said the Jahali Pachal can feed the whole country if it is used as expected. But we have seen what climate injustice has done to the region.
justice? When do we need it? Right now. Climate justice. Climate justice.
The climate change has caused a lot of negative impact in the Central River region and other parts of the Gambia. In Central River region, we have seen how deforestation and other inhumanitarian activities have contributed to climate change.
I am pleased to inform you some of the effects of climate change in CRR. Few amongst them is deforestation. You know, most of the big trees now are no more existing due to several factors: bushfire, human activities, that's cutting down the trees, grazing, expand farmlands. So that has done a lot of deforestation.
Mbediamu kang nying alhawala falingol la min kam batandi janto tonya nga bata kuol soto ala bake janto munem follow ti na yiribal be banta boy la janto because ni tata ni momoje iko ha nga lansino soto forest forest be mansa kundale koto
na do kuode ntel mu fara do kulalati na fara do kuo albeni alhawo men fokante ayem batandi bake sai ayem batandi dalila jumala katini ye do kuo ke ila do kuo ni ya do ku te fen sotala wo bata wo fango mo bata da koliyari ngol balam sai ntel nata ajube sai ni do kuo ke foka pare fanan sama kono ni ye firo ke jiolota janni wo fir fengo be funtila janni jiyo bina akatinyaro la nati sai fereti je foy sumuru yeta faroto ni muruta faroto fanan banko kengo be banta foka pare ni fonyo nata yedo kuwo mun ke ni fonyo nata abe ka lale mune yo sabu e kanyi yirkunto mun ka wulo kono wole yo sabu at
our level here, government has plans in the National Development Plan to do a lot of activities to curb the negative effect of climate change, which of course includes tree planting, afforestation, and also engaging people, discussing with them with a view towards changing their mindsets, because human activities is very, very crucial when it comes to climate change. So now people are encouraged to grow trees, to plant trees, and also to protect them, to ensure that these trees that are planted are also taken care of for them to grow to maturity.
In the North Bank region, during the caravan, we looked at loss and damages. Deforestation is not also an exceptional in this region. We have seen how the cutting down of trees has affected the area. We have also seen how the salt water has been moving from the seas and coming to the furrows to destroy their farmlands. This has also depreciated the outcome of rice cultivation. We are told that these lands are affected by deforestation, and the natives of the lands are calling for reparation or assistance in order to go in for afforestation, the planting of trees, and the protection of their forest. Harbour farmers.
This is a very important initiative because we all know now the world is struggling with climate change. It's affecting, I think, everywhere in this world. Although Gambia, we are not a major contributor to climate change, but it's affecting our country. Recently, we have, especially this year, we have a lot of floods, especially in Banjul and Combos, which indicate that we are also one of the affected countries as far as climate change is concerned.
North Bank, as many people have already mentioned, is one of the regions that has been highly affected by the impact and effect of climate change. And I would just want to give you some few examples of the reasons why North Bank is one of those regions highly affected. In the first place, North Bank is the most deforested area as far as the Gambia is concerned. And as a result, that has greatly impacted on food security in the region. Secondly, when also it comes to the production of the main staple food, which is rice, as we all know, rice is usually grown around the lowland areas. But what we have observed over the past few years is that there has been a lot of salt intrusion coming from the river floodplain into the rice fields. As a result, destroying most of the rice fields that people used to grow rice in. As we are speaking now, many years ago, people in North Bank were able to produce enough to last their families for 6 months to 1 year. But nowadays, you would hardly be able to have a family that can feed itself from their produce for a period of not more than 3 months. For the rest of the nine months, people have to depend on imported food, and this is the direct, impact of the effect of climate change.
Tree planting is another way of mitigating climate change, and that is why some young people have engaged in the nursing and planting of trees.
We are empowering youths and women to engage themselves into tree planting, because we believe tree planting is the best way of mitigating climate change. So in our region, which is North Bank, we have realized the region has serious land degradation and deforestation. So that's why we thought it very worthwhile to engage ourselves into tree planting. The main objective of this setting of this garden is basically to help rural communities replenish their forests and gardens in order to plant more trees in their forests and gardens in order to attract more rainfalls. So however, we are also helping small farmer holders and communities to help them to plant more trees in their forest.
The city of Banjul has faced a lot of climate change issues. The capital has this year experienced flood in its abundance. This flood has made certain people to abandon their homes and then lived in a school. This is all caused by the climate change and the climate injustice. And they are calling for reparation as they are victims of climate change. Now they have come up with what they call reparations of mangroves, the planting of mangroves within the rivers. This is all to mitigate climate change and climate injustice.
We all know the recent consequences climate change has done to Banjul, and it has been educated us in years, not recently, because of we've been battling with coastal erosion and floods, basically, and the destruction of the mangroves at the Tambi wetland. That Tambi wetland is a Ramsar convention, but it's a protected area. The mangroves and the wetlands, we normally call them the defendants of Banjul, but now currently it has been tampered because we have so many investors in that place. They have cutting down the mangroves and they install their structures and they are raising their funds there. But at the end of the day, it's affecting Banjul because whenever it rains or during the normal high tides and the low tides comes, Banjul normally floats, especially Banjul North constituency, that's Tobacco Road end.
Climate change bi lim ñu affect mooy flood bi ndax man mi nga gis nii ma toog nii du lal bu des suma néeg du almoor bu des suma néeg bu ma ko waxee fi mu nekk nii doo ko gum waaye boo ñëwee bi gis lal bi ma defaral suma boppa ne lii mooy lal bi ma war a tëdda bi balaa maa am li ma ko war a remplacer dina yàgga waaye fi mu nekk nii ñu ngi wax ci affaire yi flood bi naam am na dégg la dañ natural disaster la waaye man dama ne li ci ëpp yëpp man made disaster la ndite boo gisee ma ne man made la ndite ñun wecci wuñ suñ jikko ji te suñ jikko ji il faut ñu wecci ko ndax dañ jël suñ génn wàlli dëkk bi yëpp fi nga xam ne foofu la ndox bi daan jaar ñu tëj ko.
Climate change bi anyway disturb nañu lu bare ci faana yu bare soo seetee lu mel ni fita yi nga xam ne ñu ngi ci Tabakoro Tali Dawda auto mécanique yi fa nekka so ñu ñoo yaaxal lu bari si affaire yi mangrove si lu mel ni suñ mangrove si fi mu nekk ni diw yi ñoo génnee ci moto yi di ko wiide di ko tuur foofu noonu loolu yëpp dafa pollute area bi ba nga xam ne yu bari dinañ ko fa ñaaka lu mel ni oyster yiñ daan am fi mu nekk boo ko seetloo ci Banjul lu néew la ñoo am ba pare prix bi yokku na because of ñaaka bi mbiri jën tam sonal nañu lool because diw yooyu noonu fi moo dem pollute ba tax ñu ñaaka jën surtout ñun jigéen ñi fi mu nekk sona nañ torop ci mbiri jën yëpp climate change baa ko waral.
Oyster farming is another economic activity in the Gambia. Many women have ventured into the trade, but they lamented that they are now prompted with climate change issues, which led some of them to abolish the trade.
coono la ndax dañ dee dugg fi ba waa Njaago passé waa Njaago dem ba boori Lamine di dem uti yoxos bu njëkk ba yoxos dafa amoon waaye léegi mu taw ko bëri da nga gis dañoo wër ba soona pour uti yoxos moo tax léegi ta yoxos seer da loo indee yoxos bu bëri foo nga jaayee ko mu mun a seer tuuti ndax nga am si tuuti.
For many years, African story have been told by experts, by researchers who don't even feel or experience what the true African is facing. And this African Climate Caravan, dubbed Banjul Climate Caravan in the Gambia, is actually telling the true Gambia climate story. And you could see how devastating climate change have caused the development of this country. And we've witnessed of recent and past years, and of course, if nothing is done now, we will face more devastation in terms of our livelihood and in terms of our environment. We're witnessing flood. We've seen a lot of deforestation. We've seen a lot of environmental injustice, which have eventually affected the livelihood of people. And most who are affected are the indigenous people, who have contributed immensely to the development of this country. And that is why through this video or through this documentary, we are actually telling the Gambia story that the people speak of how they are affected by this climate change. And we want to thank Oxfam International and as well as the government of the Gambia and all civil society organizations and as well as the media for joining hands together to tell this Banjul Climate Caravan the climate story of the Gambia. And we do hope that global leaders will listen to this plight of the ordinary citizens of this great continent, demanding for climate finance, demanding for technologies, demanding for the right capacities, demanding for all support that will help them to put in place measures that will actually help them to remedy or mitigate the effects of climate change and as well as adapt to the unforeseen devastation that is yet to come. If nothing is done now, what happens in Gambia or in Africa might be more worse in other continents. So we share one common home and we must act together and we must take our differentiated responsibility and act now for the sake of humanity, because we share one race, that is humanity, and we share one home, that is Earth. There is no plan B, and we must not do things at the expense of humanity or at the expense of environment. And we must act now or else it will be too late. We must keep it 1.5 degrees Celsius, nothing more, and we must stay together in this fight and end the negative effects of climate change, and the inequality gap must be closed. We demand climate justice now.